Yeah, I'm gonna put this.
The king and his men stole the queen from her bed and bound her in her bones. The seas be ours beyond the powers where we will row. Yo ho, all hands hoist the colors high. Heave ho, thieves and beggars, never shall we die.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Beer Bros History Hour.
Yes, technically numero uno for the actual real life discussion.
But numero 2 in real life.
In terms of, the first episode just being an intro, and then this is our first foray into the actual topic. Very exciting.
We jumped
As you
into
can see, I weren't
Go ahead, Ronnie.
So as you can see, we weren't fucking ya.
Oh yeah. No, we jumped into several different topics briefly during our intro episode. But today specifically we're talking the Battle of Thermopylae.
Yeah, the Battle of Thermopylae, and if people can. And how's my volume, by the way? My muffled or sounding good?
You sound good right now.
All right. Yeah, so of course the Battle of Thermopylae being probably just one of those top 10 historical battles, no matter the era, no matter the army, no matter the forces involved. That was fought between the various Greek city-states and the Persian Empire. Of course, the Persian Empire was just the superpower of its day. And in its particular day, we're talking about, obviously, what is that Bronze Age?
Yes.
Yeah, 480 BC. So, there were numerous battles fought between the Greek city-states and the Persian Empire over centuries, frankly.
The Greeks used they used bronze for their swords and spear tips, correct? I believe so.
In that era, I believe so. They were Bronze Age, so.
Yeah.
So yeah, as a very brief introduction, and again, because the Persian Empire under Xerxes was attempting to conquer the people and landmass of Greece and incorporate it into his vast empire. The Persian Empire was sort of based in, I believe, what's now modern day Iran.
But that's not all of it, though. I mean, he was moving in. He wanted to move into Greece because he wanted to finish what his poppy started.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, what was that? What was his dad's name? Denarius or something? Or Dent? It started with a D. I'm trying to remember.
Yeah, and
Xerxes' father
started with a D, or they gave him the D.
Probably both.
Yeah, King Darius.
Denarius, right?
Darius. Yeah, I mean, and that's just how
not the Targaryen.
no, that's Daenerys, right? From
idea of kneeling.
Yeah, let's save that. Let's save that for a key moment.
Is your allegation?
What the fuck?
Is it your allegation?
So as sort of a reference point, the first invasion of Greece by Persia began in 492 BC, ending with the decisive Athenian victory. And there was a very famous Battle of Marathon in 490, and that's where we get the term marathon today, because after the vastly outnumbered Greek forces, especially Athenians, triumphed over a Persian landing party, an army that was seaborne landing, they had their runner run from Marathon to Athens, and then allegedly this runner died after he told them of the victory over the Persians. So, and the reason why that occurred was because, at one point, I mean, everybody, I think many people know what kind of Greece looks like today. It's it's the landmass in Europe, and then it has numerous islands. But Greece itself, like Greek culture, was spread all across the Aegean, the Black Sea, the Mediterranean. Like Greeks were everywhere. Like Turkey, modern day Turkey, used to be heavily Greek, especially on the coast.
Well,
Like,
interesting, Ben. The geography wise of what the landmass looked like back then is different from now. I was actually watching a documentary about, Greece, and Thermopylae came up, and the guy was there. He's like, the battle was fought right here where I'm standing, and back then he's like, the ocean's about 2 miles that way, and he says back then the ocean was right up to here.
oh dang, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, King Darius the First.
So that invasion, well, even though the Greeks halted the invasion, and because obviously it was a drive to punish
Hey Ben,
the
Ben,
what?
are you looking at Britannica.com?
No,
Oh, okay. So you're going from memory or what?
no, I'm referencing something else. I don't want to give out names, but it's not my. Well, it probably they all kind of mimic each other. So yeah, basically this is what's on Britannica as well. So look, it wasn't a slam dunk because the Persians actually, it was basically probably a split game, because the Persians actually had victory in a region called Thrace and Macedon, where Macedon is where the later Alexander the Great emerged from. The Persians actually conquered territory, but basically they actually still had supremacy in the Aegean Sea. They just failed to conquer and destroy the Greeks. And why that was important was because there were a series of revolts. If you look at the Turkish coast, there were a series of revolts in Greek cities along the Aegean Sea in modern day Turkey. And those were crushed, and the mainland Greek city states were supporting it. So this left the Persians very unsatisfied with the outcome. No one really, they could still win. In fact, that was probably the reason for the second invasion, was because, hey, we didn't really lose. We just lost one big battle. Okay, we still have a vast army. Let's get these punks. So and Darius obviously was succeeded by Xerxes.
All right.
Yeah. Hey, Leonidas to Xerxes. It's like we've been sharing our culture with you all morning.
No, so you were talking about the Turkish coast, so I decided to pull up a map.
Yeah, because at the time those were all Greek colonies.
Yeah. So obviously you got Greece right here.
Yep.
You got Athens. Where was Sparta on all this?
Sparta's in southern Greece, I believe. Well, what's now southern Greece?
So it was down here.
Yeah, I think, yeah, right there.
You know what? Thinking about it, they said that, obviously Thermopylae, they said they channeled them into a real tight corridor here. Was it right here?
So Thermopylae,
I don't know. As I can't.
hold on. I have a ThoughtCo article up that I want to discuss, but let's just talk about where Thermopylae is located.
Yeah, I'm just looking at fucking geography here because honestly, I have no idea where it's at.
Well, it's not like we spend our days fantasizing about Greek geography.
All right.
So it's on. So it's in. So there's an area called the Phocian Wall, where it's at. You have a gulf called the Malian Gulf. So I'm trying to see where.
On the Aegean Sea.
I think everything. I think everything's on the Aegean.
Gulf of Corinth. Yeah, I
I'm
don't
just
fucking know.
see where on
Fucking
earth.
Argolic Golf.
cocksucking laptop.
Did he say Argolic Golf?
What?
What golf did he say? Argolic
Yeah, right there.
or Megara?
Argolic Gulf. Right there.
Is that what he said though?
That's what I said.
Yeah, but what golf did he say it was near?
He didn't say that.
Yeah, there's
Ben
something
just said
called
where it was.
the Malian Gulf. Malian.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I just saw that one too, but I can't. Nope, never mind. I didn't.
Megara. South, whatever.
It's
Oh,
being
right
like
here. It's right here. Malian
Right.
Gulf right here.
the Gulf of Malia. Now today it's called the Gulf of Maliakos.
Oh, here it is right there.
85 miles northwest of Athens.
Found it right here, Thermopylae.
Yeah, see how the water's way back from Thermopylae now?
Hey, wait, so let me look. Hey, look, right here. I mean, this doesn't look like a very good place for a naval fucking invasion right here. I mean, you'd kind of be cornered. You kind of be cornered if you sailed your fleet in here.
Well, the Greeks managed to do that a couple times to the Persians. Like when you think of the Battle of Salamis, where they annihilated the Persian fleet. I don't know if the Persians were just had terrible navigators and mariners, but the Greeks did this to them on a few occasions, like with fatal results.
If I was
Yeah.
the Turks, I would have sent a land force this way,
Well, he did. He sent them across.
and I would have sent the naval forces this way at the same time.
That's what he did. Because if you look, so here's Greece, here's modern Turkey. When you look at where Europe meets Asia at the Bosphorus, that's called the Pontus or the Dardanelles. So basically, where Istanbul is today, or as I prefer, Constantinople, the Persians sent their army across because that region is called Thrace in their age, and they conquered parts of Thrace.
Oh,
So that's what they did.
So that's where Thrace is, where Spartacus was from.
Oh, no kidding. Okay.
Yeah, you remember Spartacus?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kurt Douglas. Yeah, I mean, Mike. Yeah, Kurt Douglas.
Yeah, but Spartacus was a real gladiator in real life.
I know that he was. There's a
Story
movie.
didn't
Kurt
come from
Douglas.
nowhere.
He made it.
Andy's referencing the show Spartacus.
Oh, I have no clue. I haven't seen.
Yeah, but he actually was from Thrace.
Right. In the show they initially were calling him, the Thracian.
Yeah.
In the arena, but eventually, he, coined his name Spartacus, and it stuck. So
He sure is a Spartacus looking motherfucker, isn't he?
yeah, he's got the ass chin.
So in that context, that's why it wasn't that long after. So the first Persian War, Greco-Persian War, ended in 490 with the Greek victory, and it was a very unlikely victory. The Greek victory at Marathon, and so it was only 10 years later when the Persian army, with its vast slave army as well, and was sent across the Pontus and ships to again attack Greece.
Right.
So it was only a period of 10 years. So frankly, in the ancient world, that seems pretty rapid.
Yes, I mean, it says here, the whole thing started, under what's his face? Xerxes' pappy.
Yep, Darius. Yeah.
Darius the First, the Great. He sent heralds or messengers / diplomats to Greek cities in 491 BC in the hopes of persuading them to accept Persian authority. This offended the proud Greeks greatly. The Athenians went so far as to toss Persian heralds into a pit, while Spartans followed suit and tossed them into a well.
I mean, they weren't to be trifled with. I mean, it's not that because they basically viewed the Athenians as weak. I mean, and they were warriors in and of themselves, but the Spartans were just that much more,
In
angry
all the laws of gods and men, no man threatens a messenger. This is blasphemy. This is madness. Madness. Where's Sparta?
Yeah.
Gets his ass down the fucking well.
Yeah. What is it that what is it DeSantis coins today? It's off topic, I know. We call Biden the American Nero.
Yeah, I mean, they're both mentally insane, and they both probably fondled children. So no, but so yeah, in that context,
I just thought that was funny.
My computer's not liking this.
So yeah, and a major source of information, and I actually remember maybe you guys even read it. I don't know, but I definitely read it, and maybe parts of it in high school. Definitely college was one of my favorite things to read. But the history, written by the Greek historian Herodotus, because he was basically contemporary to that era. So Herodotus is kind of a key source in understanding the Greek resistance to the Persians and the ultimate Greek triumph. But so yeah, the second Persian War began it started with an invasion, and it only lasted for a year. So again, when you think of wars from that time period, I think often people are thinking about long ass wars that go for 10, 20, 50-year stretches. This was in and out, and the other war was only 2 years. So
yeah, and then
I mean,
what a lot of people don't know. Number one, and I think we mentioned this in the first episode. There wasn't just the Spartan 300. There was about 7,000 other Greeks there during in that pass defense that they had there, defending the pass, and they were repelling a force of anywhere between 300,000 and 1.5 million. And there's a conflict depending on which historian you ask.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, look, it's going to vary widely. I mean, sometimes, they give these insane numbers just sort of to give glory to the army that, fought. It's like, oh, yeah, they took on 5 million people. It's like, well, okay, it's probably more like 200,000. But, it's still, they were still outnumbered.
Well, what does Herodotus say about the Persians' numbers?
Yeah, he had some insane numbers for sure.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I read somewhere because I actually read a very long and detailed book on the Persian Greco-Persian wars, and I'm pretty sure Herodotus had them numbered at 1 million or better. I mean, he had them numbered high.
Yeah, I mean, that sounds about right. And really, Thermopylae in this 1-year war was the first real battle because Xerxes spent basically 8 years planning this probably an elaborate evasion, and actually I mistook the landmass. It's called the Hellespont. That's where his army marched across the Hellespont, the land bridge, and into Greece via Thrace, and then he was going for an area called Thessaly, which is now Thessalonica. But so Thermopylae is where they really encountered their first real major resistance. And so that's where we kind of start this discussion. So I have a great article here, because look, there's a lot of confusing information about the Battle of Thermopylae. So, and I have a good article here from HistoryNet. I don't know if it's been a little tongue in cheek, but they call it "How the Spartans Saved the Constitution, Chick-fil-A, and Capitalism."
Hey, interesting thing about the Spartans, and you know, maybe you might know a little bit more. I'm not sure, but I believe that I read something about the Spartans, like their society. So at the time, I can't remember who it was, but I know that this book said that the Spartans actually had two kings. That the kingship wasn't given to one person. There were always two.
Yeah, so the ancient, and I don't know when that practice stopped, but yeah, the ancient Sparta was ruled by two kings, one from each of the two founding families. And I know I'm going to mispronounce this, but I'll try to do my best Greek. Agaidai, and Eurypontidae. So, and that was actually contemporary to Leonidas too. Like he
Yeah.
had while he went off and sacrificed his life, there was another king in Sparta. So that's a good point. That seems a little.
Was that other king a pussy or what? Because seems to me that if one king goes out to defend the city, the other one should go as well.
That's a good
No.
point. That, and you
I
might,
think the whole idea behind Leonidas taking 300 men to sacrifice their lives, because they knew it was a suicide mission. But the whole idea was the invasion's coming, and they had to get the Spartan Senate, the Spartan, not Senate, but the elders and the politicians. They had to get everyone behind the war, and they weren't at the time. So, you know, what better than for a king and his guard to fall in battle?
well, and look, there was actually, I'm going to switch articles real quick. Thoughtco, I think, has a better article on it. So I'm just going to kind of pull the snippets here. Leonidas, for those who don't know, was a 5th century BC military king, obviously a co-ruler of the Greek city-state of Sparta. Obviously, thanks to was it 2004 or 5, somewhere around there, the 2000, the very popular movie 300. That's where most of us today first learned about Leonidas. So he did have almost a vanguard of 300 Spartans. However, there were probably 4,000 to 6,000 other Greeks there throughout the battle. And that we'll kind of go into that later, but eventually he allowed the bulk of the Greek army to retreat so they could fight another day, because it was very clear that if they were all cut off, they'd all be massacred and destroyed. So that they're probably saying that his 300 stood their ground, along with probably about 1,000 other soldiers from other Greek city-states, especially Thesbians and Thebans. So from the city-states of Thebes and Thesbos. So again, just not that 300. That's kind of a big myth that it was just them all by themselves. Now the other key is that he received an oracle, a message from the Delphic oracle, allegedly giving this prophecy, and this was the prophecy: "For you, inhabitants of wide-wayed Sparta, either your great and glorious city must be wasted by Persian men, or if not that, then the bound of Lacedaemon," and Lacedaemon is just the name for the Spartan region, "must mourn a dead king from Heracles' line."
Well, let me ask you
The
this
might
though:
of,
how is
hold on. "The might of bulls or lions will not restrain him with opposing strength. For he has the might of Zeus. I declare that he will not be restrained until he utterly tears apart one of these. So basically, Leonidas, if this is a true Delphic oracle, which of course the Greek rulers relied on that in their days, he was possibly under the impression that he had to sacrifice his life no matter what to spare his city.
Well, let me ask you this, because look, the battle took place here, right here. The oracle was here in Delphi. So where's Sparta? How is Sparta not a city state? Given its fame, you would think they would try to preserve it.
Well, because Sparta was dissolved in 146 BC. The name was dissolved, I believe.
Well, Sparta was also, interestingly, it was one of the only city-states, if not the only city-state, that built no walls.
Because
They considered their men and their shields their walls.
Makes sense. So the Romans probably made short work of them then, at that point.
Well, yeah, that was like what, 3 or 4 centuries later, though, I think.
Yeah, when the Romans took Greece.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because Greece was a
I'm pretty
Roman
sure
province.
wasn't the final fall of the Spartan city state. I mean, I know it had declined and deteriorated over time, but even in its deteriorated state, wasn't its final fall to the Romans
That's a good question.
like reduced to rubble?
It is a good question because the Romans and the Spartans had similar fighting styles. Like the way they would fight, the way they would battle. I mean, it was similar. The shield wall, the phalanx, spears and swords behind the shield wall.
Right.
Well,
You know what I mean? So like the way they fought was similar. Their shields were a different shape, but
Oh, the Roman
matter.
legion's shields too were like a full body shield. They were intended to cover to actually make a proper wall of formation.
well, about 300 years after the Greeks defeated the Persians, that's when. So in 195 BC, this Roman general Titus Flaminius forced the Spartan tyrant Nabis to abandon all territory outside of Sparta itself and to discontinue their traditional military training. And then, a half century later, they were incorporated as a free, untaxed Roman city. So, so the Romans eventually were the cause of the downfall, but they started sort of a long decline because Sparta actually suffered a pretty devastating loss at the hands. Wow, not that long after the Persian battle. No, this was about, my bad. Never mind. This was 100 years after Thermopylae. The Spartans suffered a pretty disastrous defeat at the hand of troops from Cleve at the Battle of Leuctra. So they kind of had a long decline.
Hey Ben, I gotta ask because I'm looking at the modern map here. Macedonia used to be part of Greece, yes? And I'm assuming if that was, then Albania was too.
Well, yeah, that was all. I mean, I don't know. I can't remember if Macedonia was ever a part of Greece. I know.
Well, because
obviously,
Alexander the Great was from Macedonia, so
Yeah, but Macedonia invaded and conquered Greece and made them a part of their empire. So,
Hey Ben, so I don't know if it's the same for you, Andy, and your headphones, but you're in and out of being loud and clear. Like you're going from loud and clear to like sounding underwater, then back to loud and clear. Yeah, you, Ben.
can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
it's probably me with all my background noise from this stupid fucking computer.
Well, I'll just hold it a little closer to me. That seems to help. So,
I gotta turn my mic volume halfway down because this computer's too fucking loud. It's making a lot of noise.
so that's kind of well, maybe we just do a quick intro because I think anyone who saw the movie 300, which obviously is heavily romanticized and gussied up. I mean, obviously there weren't
Yeah,
big like demonic creatures attacking
yeah.
Right?
the Spartan troops, but
And I highly doubt the Persians landed war elephants on their ships and marched them up the hot gates. I highly doubt that.
Well, according to the article that I was just reading, they weren't using ships to invade. They had some kind of a pontoon bridge.
well,
It
depending where they
was.
were at, yeah.
I think the Persians probably landed somewhere. If you're watching my mouse, they probably landed somewhere over here and came down across this strait right here.
So
Up was right here.
to kind of give an idea of
If they were smart, they would have just come around and fucking hit him right here on this side instead of trying to cross a fucking body of water. I would have
Right.
and it makes me wonder.
and gone around.
Well, and it makes me wonder even how familiar they were, even with the territory itself. You know what I mean? Because obviously, I don't think their maps were probably like super accurate in those days.
They had to have been fairly familiar because number one, they got spies, they got scouts, and
That's true.
and his father a decade earlier tried his hand. So I mean, they had plenty of intelligence on the terrain.
That's a good
I
point.
don't know why they would pick that area to attack, especially with those numbers.
Well, maybe the numbers were just. I was like, oh, well, we'll just overwhelm them. Like we're gonna be too great.
Well, maybe
Like-
it could have been a
Right.
touch of
It
arrogance.
doesn't make sense to attack there because you have a vastly superior force. You have a huge naval fleet force and everything, and to sail those into that bottleneck is madness.
Now, granted, I don't have a topographical map here, but it looks to me like there's mountains over here and over here, probably forest because it's green. Now, this looks fairly open. Now, right here, if they were to land troops, if the Turks, which would be the Persians at the time, had moved across the sea and landed here, I mean, they could have had their entire force on site at the same time. I don't know why they would have, Anyway,
Well, remember,
we're not here to
the
talk
war-
about what I would have done. This is about what actually
Well,
happened. So
Remember that first war only lasted 2 years, which frankly, in the ancient world, was probably like lightning fast. You know what I mean? So I'm curious how if they. I mean, I know they had astronomers and their version of sort of religious scientists in that distant era, but like I wonder if they had actual map makers like accompanying the army and marking the terrain and noting the landline, the coastlines and the waterways. Like I'd be curious to hear about that history because it was only 2 years. Like frankly, that ain't substantive.
well, I mean, I'm sure they had scouted the area, heavily.
You would think so, because obviously they were a highly successful empire. I mean, they conquered numerous foes.
Yeah, and the Persians and the Middle Eastern types of that time, they weren't dummies. I mean, yeah, they weren't stupid. So I mean, I'm sure they were able to circumnavigate those this small. Where the fuck is my cursor?
Well,
You
in
said
this
circumnavigate.
case, they were absolutely stupid, which is key. And not only were they stupid, but they were faced with the most well-trained army of the Greek city-states, because historians noted that the other city-states generally had very well-trained armies.
Well, I mean, I was referring to they weren't stupid when it came to navigation and moving troops and whatever. They were definitely tactically stupid.
Yeah, that tactical was key then, because
I mean, I'm sure pride and hubris went into their decision to
Right.
attack where they did.
Well, because here's where all that collided, because of course again, people who saw 300, they kind of gave you a snippet of what the Greek training was
Right.
like. Basically, when you were age 7, Spartan males were sent through a program that the Spartans called agoge, Agoge, which is basically their entire military regimen from age 7 to manhood. And I mean, today, it probably just, was, we would recognize them as suffering like severe traumas. But yeah, so it was harsh, extreme, and sometimes cruel methods to prepare boys to become both Spartan
No,
citizens and, hold on,
actually, many Spartan, male children died in training. They were killed all the time in training.
yeah, and to them that was probably just weeding out the weak, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, because look, according to the ancient Greek historian Plutarch, who at least those who study that time period will recognize, Spartans began developing soldiers shortly after birth. Again, so when male infants were evaluated by Spartan elders, obviously they showed a scene from 300 where, like, they showed the skulls of sickly babies, down a cliff. And I mean, I don't know if they necessarily threw them off, but apparently unhealthy or deformed were left at the foot of the mountain to die.
Hey, Ronnie, look at the name
Yeah.
of this park.
The name of the park,
Yep.
motocross, gangster MX Park. My God.
That's in the island just across from Thermopylae.
I thought it would just be like, Leonidas's Big Balls Park,
Right?
Uh,
I wouldn't
when-
name this. I wouldn't, if it was me. What the fuck happened? I lost sight. Can you guys still see the screen?
yeah.
Right. I would have named this entire fucking thing right here, this whole
balls-
body here, Leonidas phallus.
Thermopylae was what, 3 days?
Well, first, I just want to, I think it was. I just want to
So-
give people a quick idea of like what the Persians were up against, even if it was only a few hundred guys, what they were up against by making this tactical blunder. Because again, I don't know about Persian training regiments. I mean, obviously the Persians had the very elite immortals, but even the immortals were repulsed by and we'll get to that.
Yeah, but again, I just want to reiterate though, it wasn't 300 alone.
We're gonna get
close
to
to
that.
10,000 other Greeks too.
Yeah, we're gonna get to all that. But again,
Hey, Ben.
yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, buddy. Go ahead.
I was just a quick snippet. One thing that the movie did get right was, well, in a way, was Theaetes, the the friggin' hunchback golem
Yeah.
they portrayed in the movie. Now, that's not true. That part isn't true. But Theaetes was actually a real person, and he was a Greek defector that showed the Persians the goat path through the mountains that led them around to the Greeks' rear.
Yeah, I mean
There was a defector.
Yeah, no, he's a real dude. I believe, I forget the history, but I believe he was probably rewarded for his betrayal.
No, yeah, he was a farmer. He was a
Yeah.
farmer out in the area, and yep.
And I'm a little torn on why they portrayed him that way in the movie. Part of me thinks, oh, they're trying to put a little blame on the Greeks for denying this guy, and then they gave him no other choice. My other thought is that they wanted to show his physical deformity was also, a deformity of loyalty. So obviously, he was physically and morally deformed, and that's what I kind of lean towards. Though I know in
Yeah.
the movie they show the Greeks like turning him down, and then Xerxes has like girls shaking their titties in his face in his tent, and that wins him over.
Right.
But yeah, so that definitely happened. I mean, they never would have
You
advanced.
remember in the movie, he's like, you can have money and women. All you got to do is show me the way around the cursed Spartans to destroy them or whatever. And he's like, I want it all. I want money. I want women. And one more thing, I want a uniform. He asked for a fucking uniform.
All right, here's a piece of loincloth and some metal underwear.
Yeah. And
What's funny at the
And
end in the
this-
movie too, he says, "You there, Theaetes, may you live forever."
Oh, damn.
you don't remember that, Ben?
No, I don't.
Yeah, he's like, you there. Me, you
Oh,
live forever.
was he actually in the battle in the movie? I forget.
Yeah, he shows up on the front line, but it's during the negotiation before they slaughter all the Spartans.
Damn.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, Spartans being, because obviously Spartan is a term that we sort of use in our own lexicon today to discuss like, ripped or, highly trained or, just overall tough. So Spartan boys were compelled to go barefoot and seldom bathed or used ointments so that their skin became hard and dry. And this is according to the Greek historian Plutarch. They were given just one cloak to wear year round to make them to endure heat and cold, which in 300 they did show him hunting in the fucking cold with just a tunic. So, for all the craziness of that film, they at least got some of the historical details accurate. They had to make their own beds from plants that they had to rip out of the ground with their bare hands from riverbanks. And so again, the training just continued on that way for decade. Well, well over a decade. Apparently, those who weren't sufficiently fit in their older years were flogged. So they beat guys who had a little paunch, I guess, as they got older. So,
Oh,
and
I
again,
don't believe they fought naked like in this picture either. The Spartans actually wore pretty heavy armor. They wore a lot of it too.
Well, you never know. The fucking Vikings fought naked.
No, but
Berserkers did.
the berserkers.
if you've ever looked at the historical Spartan army, they all had bronze breastplates, helmets, the whole 9 yards. They were pretty well armored for an ancient army.
Yeah, but if you look at the statues of them wrestling, you see they're all naked when they're wrestling.
Well, that's
That's
different.
One dude's grabbing the other dude's nuts and fucking trying to.
Well,
Look, I'm no art
that's different.
historian.
That's a Greek thing when they're playing.
I like
They're-
tickle pickles in the nude. Said
Yeah,
Plutarch.
they're playing that old Greek game called Hide the Weenie.
Oh, hey, so I mean, most Americans, I'm sure, know this story, but for those that don't, those of our American listeners that don't know this story, and I say this specifically for Americans because we have a Second Amendment. So the invaders, their king Xerxes, implored the Spartan king Leonidas to surrender his arms. Leonidas famously replied, "Come and take them," or in their language at the time, "Molan labe."
and that's exactly on this. There's a statue in Greece. Actually, I want to go there someday and get a picture with that statue because it's right there on the statue erected by the Greeks, Molan labe in their language. So
Is that in their modern language as well, or is that just their ancient language?
that's a good point. I honestly don't know because obviously we're talking about thousands of years of difference.
Do the Greeks today have their own language, or do they speak a?
I mean, Greek is its own
Yeah.
separate language. I mean, Greek has been a language for thousands of years.
Yeah,
But
I'm wondering if it's the same as it was back then, though.
I mean,
I'm sure
obviously,
it
there's a
still
ton of-
has some root or similarity to the ancient one, but
I mean, there are differences because, like, for example, students in college and like the classics, for example, they'll read like the Iliad or the Odyssey in classic Greek, like what Homer wrote those poems in, which honestly sounds kind of cool, to be honest with you. But so that brings us to the battle.
Well, actually, I have a little detail here on the movement of forces as
All
far
right,
as
yeah.
the Persians go.
Well, and that's what I mean. That brings us to Thermopylae. So let's hear about the movement of.
Xerxes led a vast army overland. So he did move overland from Dardanelles.
Dardanelles. Yep.
Yeah, Dardanelles. Accompanied by a substantial fleet moving along the coast. So hold on, let me share screen again, because where is this Dardanelles place they speak?
The Dardanelles is basically like that land mass between Europe and Asia where Istanbul is.
Yeah, so over here somewhere.
Because remember, this was also the same general area of the Battle of Gallipoli too. You know, centuries later in World War One.
So he had his army move across this bridge right here, land bridge,
Yeah, the Hellespont.
Greece, and took northern Greece and then started to move south, which, damn, they made it a long ways because the battle's way down here. They almost took the entirety of Greece before they were stopped.
So it looks like he took your advice at first.
And apparently he did, but the Greeks stopped him. Well, I mean, think about it though. I mean, honestly, when you're on foot, you're moving this far. I mean, you're a long way from home. And if you had your supply lines cut off for whatever reason, whatever forces you have over here are completely cut off and fucked.
Right.
By whatever resistance happens to arise.
The Persian fleet also had to deal with the Athenian navy, so
Yeah.
and they weren't teddy bears.
No.
No, I mean, so that's what also that location, for whatever reason, why Xerxes attacked them there. That location, accordingly, is perfect for what the Greeks called the phalanx. Obviously, their normal form of fighting. So a hoplite phalanx could block the narrow pass of the hot gates with ease, and there's no possibility of being outflanked by the Persian cavalry. So until obviously that path was shown by the traitor. So that's why it was just perfectly suited. Like they could have thrown 400 million people at them, and they just would have held it all day long. Yeah. Honestly.
So says here the the Greek resistance tried to halt Persian progress on land at the narrow pass of Thermopylae and at sea nearby by the Straits of Artemisium. The Greek army was led by Leonidas, who was estimated to have had around 7,000 men. Xerxes, on the other hand, had anywhere between 70 and 300,000 men. Despite the numbers, the Greeks were able to maintain their position.
Yeah, I mean, he wasted probably several thousand of his troops in that assault against Leonidas.
But I mean, then again, I mean, and even there's countries like that today, like China, for example. They got no problem sacrificing numbers to gain position, and yeah, they don't have an issue with that. And Xerxes, I'm sure, was the same way.
Yep.
I mean, if you got the numbers, I mean, look, he had. So we had one account here, 70 to 300,000. Then we had another account by another historian, I don't remember who, that had their numbers at over 1 million. And the Greeks had 7,000 men. You have the troops to spare. You know what I mean? So, and especially with probably Xerxes' attitude at the time, regarding his troops, they were nothing more to him than slaves.
Well, and that's
so he just sacrificed.
And that's the problem. And I think they even made reference to that. You know, again, I give 300 credit for at least, you know, discussing the mindset of the people of the time, because I believe the Spartans, Leonidas even made that point to Xerxes, right, in their dialogue, their fictionalized dialogue. talking about how basically they're free men, and he has an army of slaves who have he has to force to fight.
Yeah,
Which,
Andy, you still got it on the soundboard. You might as well play it.
yeah, so let's go ahead and talk about that. Yeah, let's hear our friend.
Movie soundbite.
The idea of kneeling, it's, you see, slaughtering all those men has left a nasty crack in my leg, so it will be hard for me.
There will be no glory in your sacrifice. I will erase even the memory of Sparta from the histories. Every piece of Greek parchment shall be burned. Every Greek historian and every scribe shall have their eyes put out and their tongues cut from their mouths, while uttering the very name of Sparta or Leonidas will be punishable by death. The world will never know you existed at all.
The world will know that free men stood against a tyrant, that few stood against many, and before this battle was over, that even a god king can bleed.
Pretty much.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So I like that debate because this HistoryNet article talks about kind of what would have happened had maybe the Persians triumphed and obviously committed mass genocide against the Greek. Because look, the Greeks were divided into what they called polis or polis, the city, or they invented the city state basically. So they were all essentially self-governing city states that banded together. And obviously that was in contrast with the Persians who had satraps, aka governors of their various conquered territories, but it was that authoritarian monarchy model. Now, obviously, it's not like the Spartans were, had basically what the English monarchy is today, which is just a figurehead. Like King Charles doesn't really rule England, right? He's just a figurehead. Not in those days.
Has he been coronated yet?
I mean, he basically has the title already. The official coronation is gonna, I think, happen this or next week. But
well, I mean, speaking of which, before we go any further, let it be known that I have no love for the royal family, but for our British listeners and those who cared for the Queen, my condolences for your loss of your monarch.
Absolutely, and look, my English roots and my Welsh roots sort of feel very fond for them. I mean, my last ancestor left England. My last English ancestor left England in 1750. So obviously, it's been some time, and of course, my numerous ancestors fought for the English and the British in the French and Indian War and helped defeat the French. But then, obviously, 10, 15 years later, they were in the Revolution. So, but look, she was a good woman. She was a symbol of stability and
yeah. I mean, and at least from what we could see publicly, she was a class act, and obviously, there's a lot of people that are going to miss her, so she will be missed. And
yeah, exactly. So they're saying on this HistoryNet site, and I kind of agree with it, that had the Greek city-states been defeated, oppressed, and massacred, then Persian authoritarian monarchy would have been the norm and would have, because look, the Greeks obviously were the inventors of democracy. Everybody has like a high school level awareness of this. Obviously, we don't talk about the Persians and democracy like we talk about the Greeks. So, because look, the Greeks had a concept of defending their city-state, the polis. Those various polises or polis existed throughout Greece, and although they had autonomy, well, and that's why they had autonomy, because they desired freedom to live according to their own dictates. So obviously, Athens was not ruling Sparta, and vice versa. And
so they were more like a loose confederation.
Yeah, basically, which is what, of course, America was supposed to be, but not to go off the deep end. But so that was the theory.
Obviously, being the size of one of our smaller states in this country, they had a city-state model.
Yeah, and I mean, frankly, that works better because it's then your ruler is closer to home. There's more of a connection between ruler and people. I mean, think about how vast Xerxes' empire was. Like he didn't have a connection to all those people. They had no. Why the hell are they gonna die for him. I mean, obviously they were forced to fight, whereas the Spartans, they were like probably lining up to take on the Persians, willingly.
Well,
I mean,
and
obviously,
the trouble with the how loose the Greek city-states confederation was is that when it came down to an attack from a foreign power on Greek city-states, it was very hard to get all of all of Greece to unite against
yeah, I mean,
against even a foreign adversary.
Yeah, but
And they were always fighting each other.
but that's why in our model, in our country, we always had a mutual defense treaty, or not a treaty, but an agreement between the states where if one of them was attacked, we'd defend each other.
exactly. And look, that model was the best model because I think obviously the founding fathers were all classic, for the most part, were classically educated men. They were like America was basically founded as both a modern Greece and Rome, in terms of the republic, the model of the republic and democracy.
Yeah,
So
and there's been there's been famous leaders and kings and generals all through history, going all the way back to the Romans, that in writings that have talked about this particular battle. So
I mean, again, this is one of the most, like, if there's a top 10 list, this is permanently on the top 10 list of most important battles in human history.
I think even Julius Caesar in several letters and maybe even some memoirs or whatever he was writing has mentioned this more than once. So
As a brief detour,
the resourcefulness of the Greeks.
yeah. Look, it says here, their strategy involved holding a line only a few dozen yards long. 7,000 men defending what we would call today in the modern military a bottleneck or a choke point that's only a few dozen yards wide.
Yeah, with high cliffs on one side and the ocean on the other. There's
Yep.
You're screwed, and it's a perfect ambush point for modern tactics. No modern army today would ever consider going through an area like that with their main force.
Definitely find a way around it, or we would soften it up with naval bombardment or something first.
Which obviously always doesn't work. I have to go back to the Gallipoli. That's what the Brits did, and the Turks held their ground.
Yeah.
Actually, and you look at the Battle of the Somme, same thing. Germans were not displaced. Battle of Gettysburg.
Battle of Fort Henry.
Exactly. So that works sometimes. Oftentimes, the Navy just overshoots, right?
Yeah, the entire British Navy bombed Fort Henry from sea for fucking all night long and still didn't defeat us. So
yeah.
But
we can all agree that provided artillery is on target, it is very effective at displacing enemies. So
but exactly. So the Greek alliance, because of course in those days they were also called the Hellenes. The Hellenes were obviously aware of Xerxes' advance, and obviously maybe he did scout this out by this point over 8 years of preparations. So they were obviously aware of his rapid advance, the defeat of Greek forces. And so Leonidas, who, if again this Delphic oracle was true, then he was aware that obviously he would have believed them. So it's like, oh God, I have to sacrifice my life or Sparta's going to get laid waste. So he led that contingency. And again, as to go back to what Andy was saying, and what we said kind of at the beginning, 300 is just a myth. Yes, there was approximately a contingent of a vanguard of 300 Spartans with King Leonidas, but there were several thousand, probably upwards of 7,000 Greeks total.
Yeah, but keep in mind though too, the 300 Spartans were the vanguard. They were the front line. They were the best trained, the best equipped, and they were the ones holding back the main assault. They were the main effort at
Yeah,
defending that pass. So,
I mean, look, they were the Navy SEALs of their day.
oh yeah,
More than them.
yeah,
So,
they were the main effort as far as holding that pass.
funny enough, so the assault began in what's now rendered on the Gregorian calendar as August 17th. So I'm gonna have to celebrate that on my wedding night too, because that's my wedding day. So I share that with the Battle of Thermopylae. That's fun.
Nice.
And yeah, so Ronnie said, yeah, it lasted 3 days before the Persians killed approximately 298 out of the, no, it should be 299 out of the 300 Spartans. They did send
Right.
one man who in the movie people remember had an eye patch. He was wearing an eye patch. He went to warn the city-state about the defeat and the death of the king, but he was treated as a bloody coward by the people.
Yeah, you remember
So
the movie when Leonidas walked up to him and he said, "Are you fit?" And he said, "Oh yes, sir." He's like, "It's only an eye. Lord, the God saw fit to grace me with a spare."
So yeah, those. So the big thing about that is they defended the hot gates for 3 days against a vastly superior Persian army. Now, the article I'm reading is more about like why this is important, but I don't know if anyone has any information on about the actual order of battle, like
Okay, I
how
do.
it occurred. Good. Let's hear how the actual battle was fought. Then I'll explain why it's important.
So, like we went over already, 70,000 to 300,000 Spartans, or not Spartans, Persians, and 7,000 Greeks, led by 300 Spartans and King Leonidas.
So at a minimum, they were outnumbered 10-1. At a minimum.
At a minimum. That's at a minimum. So
you're saying there's a chance.
So the Greeks and Spartans held the upper hand for 2 days. They defended the Persian attacks and suffered light losses as they imposed heavy casualties on the Persian army. Only when the Greeks were betrayed did the battle turn.
No, I've heard some estimates from historians that, on the first day of the battle alone, it's believed that the Greeks may have inflicted as many as 20,000 casualties on the Persians.
That's what I'm seeing. Yeah.
I wonder if they had some kind of like a rotation schedule there at the line, like, the Spartan on the front is getting his arms getting tired from swinging his sword. So is there another
spear
behind him to take up the fucking position when he needs a break?
They were hoplites, so they would have been thrusting a spear.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm familiar with the battle formations and how they fought, but I'm not familiar with their their order of battle as far as relief and posts. And
I'm sure that between, like, in lulls between attacks, they would probably rotate the lines. I mean, I would guess.
Like, is bronze as heavy as steel? Because
absolutely.
Yeah, I've owned several steel swords before, big ones. Ronnie remembers we had two Scottish claymores at one point. These things are like swinging a 10-pound sledgehammer, and for how many men can you fit in a line for a couple of dozen yards? 40? 40 men, 50, maybe, if you squeeze them in there tight. So for those men, 50, 60 men, to inflict even 1,000 casualties, their arms got to be getting tired. You know what I mean?
Right. They were probably 6 rows deep.
Yeah.
And they would have rotated, Andy. There's no way that the front line was the front line the whole time.
The main killing is being done by the first 2 ranks. So I'm just curious. I don't know how they would, in the heat of battle, you got thousands of men pressing against your line. How would you swap out men on the front line that are holding those men back?
You
know what I
don't.
mean?
You would do it in lulls between attacks.
Yeah, but you're talking thousands of men against 50. These people
Yeah, but
up front have got to get tired. Or
they don't
maybe,
press. They don't press forever. An attack will come in. It'll smash on the shields. They'll be there for a minute, swinging for a few minutes, swinging swords and spears. They'll take heavy casualties, get demoralized, they'll retreat, regroup, attack again. When they retreat and regroup, you rotate the lines. I guarantee that's how they did it.
probably. That makes sense.
So yeah, background to the battle is it was 3 actual days of physical combat. The entire engagement apparently between troops resting and lulls in the battle and probably entreaties for peace. So it was 7 days, 7 days in total. Um, so yeah, and actually more so on the resources. So what happened was on that final day when the traitor Ephialtes revealed to the Persians that I think it was a cow path or some sort of agricultural path in the
Yeah.
mountains. So it was 300, the 300, well, there's probably only like 100 Spartans left alive at this point, but, and 700 Thespians. So there was probably close to 1,000 Greeks who like stayed behind with that vanguard of including the 300 Spartans. I think 300 is like a magical number throughout history. Like in the Bible, 300 is actually used a few times for battles in the Old Testament, like with Joshua and Judges. So that's sort of like I don't know, an ancient like magical number for troops. But
Thermopylae predates all of that, so they may have taken some elements of the Thermopylae story to add to the Bible.
Yeah.
I mean that's a theory, I guess.
But I want to. I just want to say this too. This battle and the series of events outlines exactly why traitors in your midst are far more dangerous than any standing army outside your walls.
Oh yeah. Look, they
So
would have that would have been a defeat for the Persians had that pass not been exposed.
yeah, no,
Well,
yeah, there's no way the Persians would have broken those
They would
lines.
have lost, they would have broken their entire army in that attack.
even if the Persians were successful in breaking that defense and getting through, they would have suffered such heavy losses. They would
Well, yeah,
not
then
have been able to.
they would have
They
had
wouldn't have been
6,000
able to
other
continue
Greeks,
their invasion.
because 6,000 other Greeks were waiting just to stab them to death as soon as they got through the 300.
Right. Even if they were successful in breaking through that defense, it probably would have destroyed their military to a point they would not have been able to continue the invasion.
So yeah, because look, on the first day, apparently, and I don't know if this is from Herodotus or also from Persian historians, but they launched frontal assaults with waves approximately of 10,000 men on the Greek position at the Phocian Wall, which is the narrowest part of the pass. So, kudos to I don't know if Leonidas was the strategic genius or one of his generals or his captains, but they were fucking smart. They just like they knew where to have that choke for me. So yeah, because what happened was there were overlapping shields and layered spear points protruding out from the sides of the shield. So even if a guy's arm was tired, fuck, he probably just rested his shield on his brother's shoulder and just kept pushing it forward and jabbing someone in the face. Weaker shields and shorter spears and swords of the Persians prevented them from even engaging with the Greek hoplites. So they probably weren't inflicting any damage whatsoever. And Herodotus says that the units for each city of the Greek city-states were kept together I didn't know this. The units were rotated in and out of the battle to prevent fatigue, and that's from Herodotus himself. So they were moving Athenian men in or Thebans to take the place of some exhausted Spartans. The Greeks killed so many men from Medes and that Xerxes is said to have stood up 3 times from his seat. So obviously he's a god king. He shouldn't even be viewing this. It should just be an easy victory. So he was distressed. So that was basically the first 2 days before the treason occurred. And that includes the attack by the Immortals, which in the movie they portrayed them as having like some demonic kind of face underneath the mask. But he was basically their version, I guess, of the Spartans. They were heavy infantry. And officially the Persian Empire was called the Achaemenid Empire. So these are his royal troops, and they could not break through. And what the Spartans did when the Immortals attacked, they feigned a retreat. Lulling the Immortals and other Persians in, and then they turned and killed the enemy in vast numbers. So, yeah. And again, this is just repeated. On the second day, Xerxes stopped the assault after the second day and withdrew to his camp, according to the historians, as totally perplexed.
Yeah, I can't find the full fucking thing, but I just want to do like a little quote from Cicero about traitors and treason. 2,000-year-old warning about treason.
Let's hear it.
I smell a rat in my crew.
A nation can survive its fools and even the ambitious, but it cannot survive treason from within. For the traitor appears not a traitor. He speaks in the accents familiar to his victims, and he appeals to the baseness that lies deep in the hearts of all men. He rots the soul of a nation. He works secretly and unknown in the night to undermine the pillars of a society. He infects the body politic so that it can no longer exist. A murderer is less to be feared.
Hey, it sounds like the situation currently in our country.
It does, doesn't it?
I mean, history, for people who believe it and pay attention, history's cyclical. I know we've discussed this from previous times, but yeah, history just repeats itself. Like the dates will change, the names, the situations, but people remain the same. So this Ephialtes was just that guy at that time. And so on the third day of this heavy fighting, Xerxes sent his lead commander Hydarnes with men under his command, and he was actually in command of the Immortals, to circle the path. So apparently he might have had upwards, obviously it would have been a vast force. They're estimating 20,000, according to a historian called Diodorus. So that's probably overblown, but it was nonetheless a large flanking force.
20,000 immortals?
Well, 20,000, including the Immortals and other Persian men from Medes and other satraps of the empire.
Okay.
So yeah, one path. So the path branched, and this was at Mount Onopeia. Actually, so the path led from east of the Persian camp along the ridge of Mount Onopeia, behind the cliffs that flanked the pass. So at daybreak on the third day, so there were men from the Greeks, Phocians, so they were Greek allies, regarding the path above Thermopylae when they saw this vast Persian force approaching them. Now, Herodotus says that these men had jumped up and were amazed because obviously they weren't expecting this flanking force to appear. So apparently the Persians were so focused on taking out Leonidas, because obviously at this point there actually had been communication between Leonidas and Xerxes. So I believe it was either through letter or through messenger. So they knew who they were dealing with.
Mhm.
So they basically fired some volleys of arrows at these Phocians, but they otherwise ignored them to go and attack the Spartans and the Thebans. So thankfully, Leonidas, because obviously if Leonidas hadn't been informed, many more Greeks would have died, and who knows, the battles might have gone differently.
Yeah,
But runners and
my article here says Xerxes took advantage of the betrayal, obviously,
yeah,
and led his army, a portion of his army, led by the fucking traitor Ephialtes himself. After reaching the other side, the Persians attacked and destroyed a portion of the Greek army. This forced Leonidas to call a war council, at which it was decided that retreating was the best option. However, as the majority of the Greek army retreated, Leonidas, his 300 bodyguards, some helots, which were Spartan slaves, and 1,100, was that Boeotians?
yeah.
Yeah. They remained behind, supposedly because retreating would defy Spartan law. They held their ground against the Persians, but were quickly defeated.
Yeah, so apparently, and they don't really show this in the film, obviously, because that would kind of destroy the whole Alamo feel. Because let's be honest, part of the movie was to give it the idea that it's the Greek version of the Alamo, which centuries later Americans would link the Alamo to Thermopylae. But yeah, so they actually marched into the open field. So they abandoned, because obviously they were fucked either way. With the, they would have just had arrows probably raining down on them.
Well, it
So
is kind of, it is really kind of a desperate Alamo type defense. I mean, you have a small number of men at the Alamo, facing off against Santa Anna's army.
yeah,
It's it's right along the same lines.
the spirit of it is definitely there. So yeah, look, I mean, and there's some discussion about Leonidas's actions, because he told his Greek allies either flee or stay and fight. It's up to you. Some people, and I'd be curious, because I always see this thing as like, ooh, he was following Spartan law. Okay, what is that law? Like, it probably exists in tablet or parchment, but more so, I think I agree with the idea that he was recalling the words of the oracle, who warned him about either the destruction of Sparta or mourning of a dead Spartan king. So I think he basically was like spiritually committed to dying at this point of the battle. Like, it was over.
I'm not sure if it was law or just more of like a societal norm, but I'm pretty sure that they weren't supposed to retreat or surrender under any circumstances.
Yeah, but here's the thing, though, too. I mean, even if that wasn't the case, let's say this happened today, and your only thought. What would your only thought be with such vast numbers coming against you? Like, what would be your thought? What is their purpose? What's their intent? To me, their intent is complete takeover, slaughter everybody, and take the land for their own people. And like I said in our other podcast, a long time ago, say the Chinese invaded the United States, that would be exactly their purpose. They would exterminate the indigenous or the existing population here and replace them with their own people, which would be the smart way to go, because you can't occupy land like this without doing that. It's not possible.
Right, exactly.
There will always be resistance.
Yeah, exactly, because there would be a number of people that are like you and me, Andy, that would not make it easy for them.
No, yeah, I mean, we would definitely bleed them.
Well, yeah, because look, I mean, many of the Greeks were also there. Obviously, they were defending their homeland, so there's that aspect. That's especially true of the locals, the Thebans and the Thesbians, who failure at Thermopylae meant that like their immediate city state was going to be conquered and possibly destroyed. So, um,
No, and that the men of military age would be killed, and the women and the old, the women and the children would be enslaved.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So ultimately, uh, his delaying action probably allowed 3 to 4 thousand Greek soldiers to go and fight another day, which is absolutely pivotal. Now, funny enough, though, the actual next decisive battle was the Battle of Salamis, and obviously we're not talking about that right now, but it was one of the most famous naval battles in world history. And the Persian fleet was just absolutely obliterated. Like that's actually what turned the tide. Like
Yeah, by
from what?
a vastly inferior Athenian fleet.
Yep. Like where the Spartans were the masters on land, the Athenians were the lords on the sea, basically. Kind of like
They're
how,
Themistocles, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Because Athens, I believe, if I read correctly, actually was taken.
Yeah, Themistocles, that was the movie that came out after 300. Right?
Yeah.
Right. And then he ends up fucking the Persian fucking female
That was
commander there.
that was that was all Hollywood there.
Yeah.
I don't
And
think that actually happened.
and
But
she insults him by saying, "You fight harder than you fuck." Oh shit.
So
my
yeah,
God, Anna.
basically, once the treason occurred, the Greek at that point, like apparently, Leonidas was actually killed in the main assault. So there was a battle over his body. The Greeks eventually, once their spears were broken, they went to the, I don't know, it's Xiphe, Hippe, or yeah, probably Hippe, short swords. Herodotus stated that 2 of Xerxes' brothers fell in the battle along with Leonidas. So you're talking about major leadership dying in this battle on both sides. I mean, this,
Yeah.
Holy shit. Dude, Leonidas was 60 years old. 60.
and he probably did push-ups just using his pinky. So he's probably
Exactly. Dude,
he was the
Yeah.
original Chad.
he was 60 years old in this battle.
Right. And he was hands behind his back doing fucking boner push-ups.
Doing cock push-ups.
He had like 20 naked women sitting on his back while he did that too.
All right, so
Right.
But look, okay, so here's kind of the fate now. So they obviously were in this open field. They were pushed back by the Persian assault. Then they went on a hill to stand behind the wall, obviously the Phocian wall. Um, the king had the Theban troops. So the king had Theban prisoners branded with a royal mark. And here's what happened to the remaining defenders, according to Herodotus. They defended themselves to the last, those who still had swords using them, and the others resisting with their hands and teeth. So Xerxes ordered the hill surrounded, and then the Persians rained down arrows until every last Greek was dead. And just to give you an idea, in 1939, a Greek archaeologist was excavating Thermopylae. He found a large number of Persian bronze arrowheads at what's called Kolonos Hill. So that Kolonos Hill is where these fucking Chads made this was their Alamo stand at this hill.
yeah. But here's my question. How did they find all these arrowheads? Because normally, I mean, if it were me and I was leading an invasion and I won a battle, I would try to collect up all the serviceable arrows that I could get back from the battle. You know what I mean? I wouldn't
Yeah,
leave, I wouldn't leave all that behind.
yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, obviously, maybe they were trying to because obviously they were delayed several days in the invasion. Like this was not supposed to happen. So
Yeah.
if I had to take a guess without reading the primary resources, I would say they were just trying to, march as rapidly as they could so they could take Athens.
Well, I mean, it's pretty well documented. I mean, there's plenty of ancient battles, even from Roman times and stuff. I mean, they find arrowheads all the times excavating those sites. A lot of them.
Yeah. So,
So,
I got,
and finally, sort of as a final disrespect to the slain Leonidas, Xerxes, who was in a full-on rage at this point for all of his dead troops, ordered Leonidas' body to be both decapitated and crucified.
Mhm.
wait, crucifixion was a thing in 480 BC.
Apparently, that's what Herodotus is. I know that's associated with Romans, but Romans probably just stole that shit too. So,
Huh.
um,
Well, I got a little excerpt from a National Geographic article.
all right.
Xerxes attacks. Standing in his way in the summer of 480 BC was a rare Confederate alliance of normally fractious Greek city-states, some of which were forced to suspend war with each other in order to face the greater threat from Persia. Athens, which had supported Greek cities in the Ionian Revolt and later defeated Darius, or however you pronounce it, in 490, led the coalition with Sparta. The Athenian politician and general Themistocles led the Greek naval opposition, blocking the Persian fleet at the Strait of Artemisium. Leonidas, king of Sparta, commanded the ground forces at Thermopylae. 300 members of his royal Spartan bodyguard called hippies. Yeah, hippies. That's how I pronounce it.
Hippies.
The subjects of countless books, movies, poems, and songs, along with a lesser celebrated contingent of 7,000 soldiers in all, including 1,000 Phocians, 700 Thespians, and 400 Thebans. Leonidas, aged about 60, had ascended the throne around 490 BC after the previous king, his half-brother Cleomenes, died heirless. The 300 Spartans with him were an elite cadre whom Leonidas had chosen personally. He wanted only soldiers with descendants to accompany him, since he
Nice.
knew there was
Nice.
little chance of them surviving and wanted to be sure that their lineages would continue.
Yeah, and that's interesting because you look at some war movies sometimes, and it's kind of the reverse. It's like unmarried men only, but I like what he was thinking.
Yeah, I mean, you know what though? I mean, we do something similar here in the States with our draft. Um, if you're a single child, an only child, you're exempt from the draft, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, so, I mean, so that makes sense because he wanted his people obviously to continue because in those days your kings actually didn't betray your own people, which is kind of nice. So
I
But
think
I
I
mean,
think with the draft too, I could be wrong with the draft in this country. Um, when it was a thing, I believe the youngest sibling is also exempt. So if you had like four males, the youngest could not was ineligible for the draft.
yeah, and then there's another thing too, like with the draft and everything, siblings. I mean, and this was portrayed very well in the movie Saving Private Ryan. Siblings are they're not they're trying to keep separate. Like they don't put siblings in the same units with each other. They separate them, put them in different places to to minimize, say a whole entire unit's destroyed and every brothers, all the brothers are in the same unit, so they all die in the same battlefield. You know what I mean?
yeah, 'cause look, like even in you go back to World War I, and this is why so many villages across Europe were absolutely devastated because you had what were called PALS battalions, where they let friends from all the same fucking village join the same unit or same company or battalion, and then they'd all get killed.
Yeah, I mean we do something like that too. What's it called? what was that called, Ronnie? When you joined, was it the buddy program or some shit like that? You join with a friend of yours, and you're good through basic. You're gonna be together, but after basic, all bets are off.
Right. Yeah. It was something, I don't remember what it was called, but yeah, it was kind of a thing.
Yeah, something like that. They don't let
The
you stay
one that
together after basic.
I want to go to something because, one of the most famous phrases, which is important to patriots, especially in this day and age, especially now, we could say, Biden is our own Xerxes in a sense. He's just that kind of mad and destructive.
Biden's
But,
Nero.
patriots are very familiar with the phrase "Molon Labe," and sometimes you'll see that bumper sticker with a Spartan helmet, the helmet of a helot or a Greek soldier. So, sometimes I was wondering, is that really real? Because sometimes the internet can be a son of a bitch and give you false quotes. However,
Here's a statue
Molon,
of Leonidas right here.
yeah, in on the peninsula where the battle was fought, but it actually is a legitimate quote. Like patriots can I think this is a quote we all should rely on, especially as one of defiance, because it was uttered by a real MF and Chad in face of tyranny. So Plutarch, who we were discussing earlier, cites the phrase "molon labe" in his it's a long ass Greek word called Apopthegmata Laconica, sayings of Spartans. The exchange between Leonidas and Xerxes occurs in writing. On the eve of the Battle of Thermopylae in 480, when Xerxes wrote again, "Hand over your arms," he, meaning Leonidas, wrote in reply, "Come and take them." So this goes back to Plutarch. So this is a legit phrase. Like they had an exchange, which is insane to me that they at least communicated at least once during this historic battle, and he just basically, showed him his dick. He basically gave him the scene from Braveheart with his buttocks. Maybe they should have done that too.
I imagine that was his reply. He probably said, "Come and take them," and then drew like a giant, glorious cock on the paper and sent it back.
I mean, in Braveheart, it started with the mooning of the ass cheeks, and then it turned into the helicopter
Right?
immediately after.
But yeah.
That one poor bastard caught an arrow like right through his ass. Like,
hey, that's the money shot, dude. That's $1 million wound. You get to go home. And
right?
it's not fatal.
So and obviously Molon Labe, and actually, funny enough, that's not even like a modern phrase that American patriots started using. It originated, I guess not surprisingly, with the Kingdom of Greece during the First World War and with their follow-up war against the Turkish Republic. So they again, Thermopylae was obviously, and no shit, obviously surprising, an inspiration for Greek forces, and America, which more Americans should be aware of this. America is founded basically as a modern Greece and a modern Rome in terms of our principles in our buildings. So obviously we have taken on that phrase now for good reasons, because again, this battle was a battle between small autonomous city states, which America was always supposed to be, versus a centralizing globalist centralist force of the Persian Empire. They were going to extinguish those Greek values which basically led, centuries later to the United States. So without the Greeks winning that battle, there might not have been an America. And maybe that's a stretch to some people, but you think of the butterfly effect, you change one fact and shit's really different. You change
But while our republic was modeled after the Greek model, it's not identical. And
no, I mean, look,
the Greek model existed for hundreds of years prior to the Persians. So I think it's possible we probably would have existed the way we are now, even if Thermopylae had never happened. But
I don't know. I really don't, because look, I mean, you look at what liberating movement did the Persians ever inspire? I mean, or the Iranians, right? Nothing.
I have a quote.
Their culture does not inspire freedom.
I have a quote here from Leonidas when the oracle asked him why he wanted to go to war with Persia. You want to hear it?
Yeah, let's hear it.
I don't like them putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay.
Sounds about right.
And I'd say actually an early American adaptation of this is probably the Texas Republic flag of "Come and Take It."
Right.
So,
hey, did the Texas flag actually say "Come and Take It" or did it say "Molan Labe"?
well, obviously a bunch of Texans aren't going to start speaking that Greek. It's all Greek. It's all Greek to me, Jim Bob. But no, actually, no. Look, because to be fair, many of them are lawyers.
There is a Molan Labe grunt style shirt, I think, if I remember.
I'm gonna have to get that because the more I read about this story, like I just get chills up my freaking spine.
I've seen those. There's Molan Labe t-shirts, sweatshirts, all kinds of stuff you can get.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's grunt style, but it's something. I've seen them around.
I know InfoWars put one out years ago.
And apparently today, the motto, obviously, it was picked up by, a little more historical context. It was picked up by militia movements in the 1990s, probably especially after Ruby Ridge, I guarantee you, and Waco.
Yeah.
And now apparently today, it's the motto of the Special Operations Command Central, which is a little ironic. So.
Yeah, I have zero doubts as to the loyalty of Special Operations. They're definitely patriots.
Well, we will see that in days to come. However, so this painting here, again, it's kind of a romanticized painting because that's what romantic painters do. They make shit look more idealistic than it really was. But there's Leonidas in the front with looks like he's holding a tire iron and his dick is out. So,
hey, maybe he wanted to peg Xerxes.
Hey,
well, that
what? When he was painting it, they said, is his junk out? Yep. Now it's a party.
Well, the first thing Leonidas said when he walked up to Xerxes was, "You like what you see?"
Yeah, and gave him a little helicopter as he walked up.
Well, I'm surprised that the painter didn't have the peninsula tipping over sideways. Because look, he's leaning on one leg, so the island should be tipping that way.
Right. I mean, the weight of those balls got to be fucking listing that island something fierce.
Right.
That's actually what caused the defeat of the Persian fleet at Salamis. Was the wave caused by Leonidas's nut going to one side.
So the defeat of the Persian fleet at Phallus.
Right.
Phalluses.
But I mean,
oh my
look,
God.
in all seriousness, because look, America isn't just the sum of what it is today since the revolution. I mean, obviously, we're kind of the product of multiple centuries, not just from 1775 upwards. There were thousands of years of principles at play in this country, because when you read, Washington or Jefferson, I mean, even when you look at the Civil War and you hear,
and the Democrats are trying to destroy all of them.
Well, they are, because these men aren't along. Like, obviously, look, Leonidas was not a libertarian, right? He was an autocrat, but his actions basically preserved human freedom to this day. Because again, the Persian Empire did not leave behind a legacy of like local autonomy and didn't lead to a flourishing of democracy. We would have had permanent tyranny had they won. It's basically Mordor against Rohan, just to throw out some Lord of the Rings references.
Yeah, but here's the other thing too. He wasn't your typical, modern king. He was a king, but he got his ass out there with the fucking troops and got to work. Just, you know what I mean? He wasn't some old fucking bureaucrat oligarch sending all the fucking young kids out there to fucking die in some pointless war. Yep. He got his ass out there in the mud with the rest of them.
Well, right. Look, I even read that about
And actually, I think the German tribes fight against Rome would be kind of an interesting topic at some point, because that's something I read about the German tribes, where it's like if the chieftain, or I think they call them the Reich, but basically if the chief wasn't out there fighting, he was basically discarded. Like his leadership was useless.
Yeah, they call them the Reich.
Yeah, the Reich.
Yeah.
So if he wasn't out there huffing it with the boys against, the Italians, the Romans, like he was no good.
Right. You got to lead from the front, sir.
Yep. Yeah, so you're right. I mean, there's, one of the co-rulers, and obviously that also goes to show no one remembers this other jackass's name. Like,
Yeah, but see, like that lead from the front shit, it's true, but it's not always true. Not always. Sometimes the leadership on the battlefield has to take a step back where they can view the battlefield and give orders in a clear state of mind. You know what I
well,
mean?
yeah, look, like obviously, because they had to have like a war council to discuss next steps and defensive measures.
Well,
Like,
yeah, I mean, but normally war councils are strategic. We're talking tactics in the heat of battle. In the middle of a battle, you don't want your top command engaging in the fight because they're not able to observe the battlefield and direct troops where they're needed.
Right. It's called the fog of war.
Yeah.
Can't do that.
You need to have a command that's separated from the violence.
well, yeah, I know that. I'm just saying that had to be super motivating for your average guy to like see your fucking king.
Yeah, your
right
king is
there.
on your fucking right shoulder, like,
And
fuck
he like
yeah,
gives
let's
you,
get this shit.
then after you slaughter the first wave of the immortals, he gives you a fucking pat on the ass or the shoulder, like good job, son. Like you're a fucking king yourself in your head right then and there. Like, dude just gave me a pat on the shoulder. Like that's motivating, dude.
Shit, I would have gave him his ass cheek a nice little squeeze too.
Hey, you know who I'm pretty sure would fit right in with the Spartans with his mentality? Old General Patton.
Well, Patton probably would have thought he was because remember he believed in past lives. He actually thought he had fought in ancient Roman battles, I believe.
He's like,
Right,
we'll
no,
always
yeah,
move forward. We will never retreat. We'll let the
If
Hun
I
do that.
remember right, I think Patton believed he was reincarnated from a like ancient Carthaginian general or something.
Something like that. Because there's a scene, not to go off in the deep end, but there's a scene from the Patton movie with George C. Scott where he's just basically telling one of his officers all about the battle and how it happened.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, did we play that on Beer Bros or did we play that on Anticom? Because I think we played that.
I think we played it on
Might have been on
Anticom.
Yeah, but yeah, he's basically goes out. He's like, I smell a battlefield around here, and he's like, no, the battlefield's like five kilometers away in that direction. He's like, no, take a right. He's like, but the battlefield's over there. No, take a right. And he takes a right, and he goes up there. He's like, here it is. It's right here. He's like, there's nothing here. He's like, I can smell a battlefield. He's like, this happened, and he's talking about this battle between the Romans and the Carthaginians. Yep. And he starts going through this poem or whatever. I don't remember the whole thing, but he's like, you know who said that? And the guy's like, who? He's like, me.
Yeah, 2,000 years ago.
Yep.
I did. I was here.
It was me. I was here.
But yeah, so I mean, just when you think about that, who knows? Maybe he was also at Thermopylae for all we know. But yeah, look, at the end of the day, people should read about these people, read their story, learn from them. Because look, what they did in 480 BC, obviously thousands of years before any of us inhaled oxygen, is still applicable today. Because at some point in every battle, like even look at the Revolution, you had unironically a similar number of Marylanders, about 300 to 400 Maryland troops, who basically sacrificed their lives in Washington's retreat from New York. And Washington was crushed in New York. Like that was almost a quick end to the revolution. But these 300 to 400 Marylanders just put it all on the line, sacrificed themselves so Washington could retreat. They saved the country. So I mean, it's applicable throughout history. And who knows? God knows someday it might happen here too, whether it's an invading Chinese force or if it's even treason within our own ranks, in a
Yeah.
civil war.
And also think about this. I mean, like I said, the main effort of this defense was the 300 Spartans. Obviously, they had the support of 7,000 other Greeks, but the main killing was done by the Spartans, and they had to
business is booming.
They had to disperse their 300-man line across 80 feet, 80 feet wide, and they were facing up to, I mean, by some accounts, 300,000, others a million Persians. So their ranks couldn't have been any more than 3 deep, in my opinion. And you got to look there at the necessity of physical fitness in warfare, because these guys had to have been in insane shape to be able to swing that sword for 2 to 3 days.
All day long.
All day long.
There were times where there were multiple attacks, and then there were times where there were lulls in the battle. But still, even lulls, you're not talking about a whole day.
Well, yeah, but I mean, think about too, though. Those of you who haven't exercised or lifted weights extensively, when you have a good workout, you're fucking sore. You know,
Right.
so you spend 6-7 hours swinging a fucking 5, 6, 7 pound sword. You're probably going to be pretty sore.
Well,
Yeah,
you got to
you
keep
know,
in mind
what is
too
that?
that the sword was their secondary weapon. They were primarily spears.
Yeah, the second rank was spears. The first rank was shields and swords.
No, I believe they were all spears until the spears were broken. They went to the sword after.
Yeah, that's about
Yeah,
right.
but the first rank though, the swords would be more useful, while the second rank has the long spears to reach over.
I mean,
No,
the point being
the
is
whole
they probably
idea
did-
of a Spartan or a Greek in general phalanx, they had insanely long spears, longer than your average infantryman's spear. And the idea was to maintain that distance so the enemy couldn't engage you. It was to keep them at a distance where you could attack them from 7 feet away when they couldn't. And so, I mean, it would make sense for the front row to have spears as well.
Well, I mean, I'm sure they did, but to me, I don't know. It makes sense for the front rank to be a shield wall and the second rank to be working those spears.
I mean, look, in the front rank probably had to whip out their swords because they were obviously engaging with troops all the time, so they were probably using their swords.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what their actual tactics were as far as fighting in the phalanx formation, but it would make sense to me that the front rank, I mean, maybe they did have spears, and when they were broken they had their swords, but the main function of the front rank was a shield wall, and the second rank had, and third maybe, had the shield or the spears.
Like even Roman infantry, I mean, everyone pictures them with the big shield and the gladius, but no, that was not their primary weapon. The Romans had like two. They had a pilum or pilum, which was when they closed to a distance with the enemy, they would hurl it like a javelin. A lot of infantrymen, a lot of the cohorts would carry more than one. They would have 2 or 3 pilum or javelins, and they would throw them at the enemy before they closed with the gladius. But their primary weapon was a pilum.
You know what the main function of that throwing spear that the Romans had? You know what it was? It was to take the shields out. because
Yeah, because it was puncture these shields and they couldn't take it out.
yeah, but the design of the spear was this. It had the wooden shaft that you would throw, and on the front of it, it had this soft metal point, and it was like a metal shaft with the spear point that was what do you call it, barbed at the end. So it would punch through the spear or the shield, and it would bend and it wouldn't come out, and it was all floppy, so that pretty much made the moving around, and it made the shield useless. So the defender had to put the shield down. So when you had thousands and thousands of these spears thrown at these shields on the opposing army, it took out their shield wall, because they couldn't move with it. They couldn't get the spears out of their shields, and they couldn't break them. So that's what they were designed to do. It wasn't to kill as much as it was to destroy the shield of the opposing army.
So yeah, I mean, regardless, I mean, that's why I also gave a brief run through on their known physical training as well, because there's even a point where they were given meager meals, so they would both become lean, and they would also become sort of hungry to find food and to fight for food. So yeah, look, they were basically warrior. I mean, obviously they had children and descendants, but they were basically like warrior monks, for lack of a better term. That's why they also call it like a Spartan diet, meaning you eat very little, or you're very meager food. I mean, look, these people were just that's why they were the tip of the spear at this battle. That's why we remember them and Leonidas, and not whoever the frig the other guy was. No one even knows his name because he wasn't there.
They
Like, no one knows this dude's name. That's my point.
they
Like,
fought, they fought like warrior poets.
it was these people who are remembered throughout time, and it kind of reminds me, in a sense, of if anyone, if no one's ever read the Odyssey, the Iliad and the Odyssey, they should, because that's just such amazing classical literature. But who's the main character? It's not Hercules. It's what's his name?
Odysseus.
Achilles.
I thought the Odyssey was Odysseus.
Yeah. Odysseus is the Odyssey, but Iliad, it's Achilles.
Yeah.
And Achilles was told by his mother. Well, here's the thing. And I'm obviously paraphrasing here. There's a great war coming, and those who fight in this war will be remembered for eternity, for thousands of generations. Now you have two choices, my son. You can stay home and you'll have descendants, and they'll adore you. They'll remember your name for the first few generations, but then, after a period of years, you'll be forgotten. Or you can go to Troy, and you will die there, but you will be remembered for the ages.
Yeah.
And when I think of Achilles, because of course the Trojan War allegedly occurred probably hundreds of years even before Thermopylae.
Well,
I think of Leonidas.
Achilles was a Spartan, right? And Agamemnon?
No, Achilles, no. What the heck did he call his troops in the I'll find out.
I think they were Spartans, weren't they?
No.
Well, I mean, anyway, in the movie, that kid fucking rouses Achilles from his slumber, and he's like, "This man you're about to fight, he's the biggest man I've ever seen. I wouldn't want to fight him." And he's like, "Well, that is why no one will remember your name."
Well, let me.
People.
The main commander, the king, Agamemnon. Was he not from Argos?
Yeah, I think so.
Was he?
So yeah, I believe they were at least the king of the United Greek military at that time was from Argos.
Wait, yeah. So this was prior to Thermopylae.
Yes.
I mean, yeah, I mean, the battle, the siege of Troy, I mean, obviously, I don't know if that was what the actual battle was called because it was based on far ancient sources. But yeah, it occurred long before Thermopylae. So
Probably 1,000 years.
in the Iliad, Achilles led a tribe called the Myrmidons.
The Armadons, right?
Myrmidons.
Oh, okay. We don't want you Armadons thinking you can have all your fun without us.
Oh my God.
I can't talk about things like this without quoting Braveheart.
Right?
I just can't. I can't do it. I can do it. I can do it.
Hey, you know that like in the movie Troy, a lot of the same actors from Braveheart were in Troy too. So, I mean,
True. He's like, if I swear allegiance to him, all that I am is dead already.
So I think key lessons here, because I think that's kind of why we're also doing this, is first to discuss these sort of immortal warriors, and then B, learn our lessons from them. So yeah, you brought up a great one, which is that traitors in our midst are far more dangerous than the foes to our front.
Yeah, Cicero.
Obviously, I'd say, look, for all those out there, and look, I'm not in peak physical fitness. I'm, getting there, but not that you have to have a Spartan training routine, but if you're not in shape right now, shape the hell up. Like start going to the gym, or there's apps on your phone where you can start challenging yourself. Like get in shape.
I know. I got to get back on it, dude. I've been slacking.
Like,
yeah,
if you had been
you
running from
definitely
the
don't
fire,
want to have to forge yourself in the fires of combat.
I've already done that. But
and B, find inspiration from these people. Because look, that's why I'm big on history and ancestry. Because like I find stories from even my own my own family's past that inspire me to do what to have the beliefs that I have and to prepare the way that I prepare. Because it's like I had family in both world wars, the Civil War, the Revolution, especially the Revolution.
hey Ben, ask me and Ronnie what happened to the Romans.
What happened to the Romans?
You're looking at him, asshole.
What's that from?
The
Sopranos.
Sopranos.
Oh, that's right.
You're
Let me
looking
think
at him, asshole.
Nice, nice.
Oh shit, that was great.
Yeah, they were shaking down some Jewish synagogue or something, and the Jews were like, talking shit about the Romans and like, this and that. I can't remember exactly what
Like
they
the
said
Jews
or
basically
whatever. And they're
ruled the
like,
Roman Empire
yeah, and,
today.
they
He's
were
like,
all
the
greedy
Romans.
and powerful and all this, and look what happened to them. What happened to the Romans? Where'd they go? He's like, you're looking at them, asshole.
Well, to the Romans' credit, man. I mean, and we'll obviously talk about them at some point because they're key to America's founding too. But the Romans were pretty good about adapting after they had some major ass whoopings. Like they adapted strategies. So
So
Well, yeah.
you mean they had some good after action reviews?
yeah.
Even the Romans, the symbology of the Romans, their battle standards and everything, the eagle and the olive branch and the arrows and the eagle's talons and all that, that's all major shit in American symbology as well.
Yeah, and
Yep.
I'd say that Rome is probably more important to America's founding because of the Republic itself and the Senate and all that stuff than Greece. I mean, it's probably like a close first and second kind of place issue, but
Yeah, but the difference there is the Roman model was centralized and the Greeks were not. And I tend to go towards the Greek model.
well, and that's an
Initially
important
not,
fact. I think
though.
that's what we were supposed to be. Like,
Initially not, though. The Romans initially were a republic. It wasn't until Julius Caesar launched a successful coup and declared himself emperor, that they became an
I mean,
empire.
yeah, but again, because I don't know that the Romans ever had like that idea of the city state, and then they just allied themselves with various city states, periodically, but they were otherwise autonomous.
Yeah,
Like
but
even the Republic, I think, was like conquering territory.
yeah, but sorry,
God.
I pushed that by accident. Caesar, honestly, though, Julius Caesar had no choice. He had to do what he did. He had to.
He was a victim of circumstances, man.
No, I mean he had to, or he would have lost his fucking position and his power. And the House of Julii at the time was it was losing its standing in Roman society. And I mean, I don't remember exactly the circumstances surrounding his crossing the Rubicon with his 13th Legion, but
Yeah, his main
But I
adversary, the other family, was Pompous
Pompey Magnus.
Pompey Magnus. Yeah,
Yeah, he had, but I mean, at the time, it seemed like the best option to him.
That's true.
It seemed
Well-
better than the alternatives.
Yeah, so I think though for tonight, I think we got a pretty good lesson across about the great Leonidas and the Spartans, and et al. What we can say is the 300 Spartans et al. Like you see in legal proceedings, because no one really gives a shit about those other people. Unfortunately, they were brave, they sacrificed, and no one remembers them. It comes down to those. So.
Yep.
Like, I think this is really a great way to kind of open up this sort of discussion.
It's like in the movie, he says, "I'm not going to war. I'm going for a walk." And these 300 men, I got to stretch my legs. These 300 men are my personal bodyguard.
That was pretty funny, yeah. No, but yeah, I mean, he was actually sent there intentionally as the commander of the Allied force
Yeah.
to secure that pass. And whoever his cowardly co-king was that no one remembers, because why? Let's look at 300. No, what was it? Troy. What did he say to the boy in Troy?
Well, the boys said, they want you to go and fight, and they said, the man you're fighting, he's the biggest man I've ever seen. I wouldn't want to fight him. He says that's why no one will remember your name.
And there it is. That's why no one remembers the other king's name.
Yep.
Well, I think there was also other reasons why that king probably didn't go to war as well, because I believe, if I remember right, the two-king system in Sparta, one was in charge of the military and the other one was in charge of economic affairs, or not economic affairs, domestic affairs, city affairs.
Public policy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, any more on our friend King Leonidas, King Leo?
I think that's just about it, man. I think we've pretty much covered it.
So do we want to continue on a similar vein, or surprise and discuss more of the Greek badasses, or do we want to?
Now we'll roll with a whole different topic next week.
All right, fair enough. Actually, you know what? We were talking about our boy Patton. Maybe we discuss him.
Yeah. Or maybe we can be more American and talk about the bombardment of Fort Henry.
Damn it, you're right.
And,
Actually,
the origins of our Star Spangled Banner.
Love it. Down with it.
Yeah.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah, and remember, ladies and gentlemen and children, that the fireworks on the 4th of July, they symbolize us throwing musket balls and cannon shot into the faces of those that would deny us our freedom.
Actually, I think it symbolizes the musket balls and cannon shot that was fired at us because they would deny us our freedom.
Andy, Quiet
Well,
you.
well, I mean, it was going both ways. I mean, we were returning. Well, we'll discuss it next week.
Oh, I'm sure we returned fire, but it wasn't anywhere
Yeah.
near on the level of the fucking
Yeah.
fleet.
No, I'm sure we sat in that fort and just let them bombard us, and we didn't return anything.
Yeah.
I'm sure we didn't do anything.
Oh, I mean, to hear some tell it, you know, the only thing holding that flag up was the bodies of people that were holding it up.
I believe it.
Oh, yeah, we can hash that out next topic.
Yep. So, you know what? This is, you know, a subsidiary of the Supernatural Beer Bros podcast, which is why we call it Beer Bros History Hour. So you can find us in all the same places. We're on every major podcast platform. You can hit us up at supernaturalbeerbros@gmail.com, or you can DM us on Instagram at SBBpod. And yep, if you're listening to this, chances are you've listened to the Supernatural podcast as well. So I don't need to explain anything else.
And remember, kids, Molon Labe.
Come and take them.
Remember, kids, stack the bodies of your enemies 30 feet high and form a secondary wall.
Just remember, raise the black flag and start slitting throats.
No, only when the situation is so desperate that you're forced to that. We don't condone violence here.
Like the Spartans carry a secondary weapon in case your spear breaks.
All right, so this has been Beer Bros History Hour. And unless Ben and Ronnie have anything else, we are signing out.
Adios.
Good to go, man.